Hi everyone. Today I wanted to do a kind of leisurely stroll through some of the magazine and a couple books that I've been reading lately concerning film, and one is the recent release of issue 36 of Noir City, published by Eddie Muller's Film Noir Foundation. This is the sixth of a physical copy of the magazine. There's 30 other digitally available copies of Noir City magazine that you can get through the Film Noir Foundation. I love the physical, I love the feel of it. This is when I purchased the first one, when it became available in physical edition, I just loved it. I mean, it's glossy, it's got great writers, great articles, great artwork and photos. So this is Eddie Muller. He's the publisher, but he's not the editor-in-chief. And for the past 4 years, Vince Kremer has been the editor-in-chief. And you know, he was also the instigator of a proponent of getting the digital copy onto a physical copy. He's leaving as editor-in-chief, and Eddie Muller has tagged Imogen Sarah Smith as the new editor-in-chief. I can't imagine anybody more qualified to edit a film noir magazine. Hopefully she won't be inhibited in her commentaries and in all the work she does for the Criterion collection. She does have a commentary coming out at the end of this month on Kino's release of The Lady from Shanghai. She has a commentary on that I'm looking forward to listening to. So the magazine will be in good hands. I just wanted to spotlight a few articles and then get to these books: Quentin Tarantino Cinema Speculation and also Savage Cinema, Sam Peckinpah and the Rise of Ultra-Violent Movies. And I read these concurrently, finished them within a couple hours of each other. There's a lot of overlap in these two books. But first, let's get to the magazine. This is indeed is Veronica Lake, peekaboo hairstyle from the 1940s. It's their centenary, so they have the main article is, and the longest article is concerning Veronica Lake, with some great pictures covering her whole career, her life. Some of the pictures, poster art from some of the pictures that she was in. Talks a lot about her co-star, the movies that she co-starred with Alan Ladd. And then it does get to her later life, and which was very sad. And she was thought to be homeless. I think this was probably in the 1960s, but she was living in New York. She claimed that was a story. She was never actually homeless. But she had estranged herself from her friends, her family. When she died, there was only 3 or 4 people at her memorial service, and before that, she had a star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Only 3 or 4 people attended that. So she ended up very sadly, but you know, she had her time, and boy, she was beautiful and had that distinctive hairstyle. Another article I want to spotlight is The Neo-Noir World of Claude Chabrol by Farron Smith Namey. Anybody who knows, who watches, familiar with my channel, you know I'm a huge Claude Chabrol fan. And Farron Smith Namey supplied commentaries to some of the movies in the 2 collections, box sets of Chabrol movies that Arrow released in 2022, Lies in the Seat and Twisting the Knife. But she also talks about La Ceremony, which is not in that collection. I think it's still playing on the Criterion channel, considered by her and by many to be one of Chabrol's great films. But she focuses mainly on the films in that set, and she also is a big fan of La Enfer Torment with Emmanuel Biart and Francois Cluzet, a film that rises in my estimation every time I watch it. So that's another excellent article, and I'm skipping over a bunch. There's more here than what I'm showing you. But another one I had to show you was the Siren Song of Gail Sundergaard, who was one of the most eerie actresses of her time. She did play in comedies too, but I think she was best when she was playing a kind of role like she played in The Letter with Bette Davis. She was tabbed to be the Wicked Witch of the West for The Wizard of Oz, but the studio thought she looked too pretty in these test shots, and they wanted her to be made up to look ugly. She didn't want to do that. Margaret Hamilton obviously becomes the Wicked Witch of the West, and then her life before she was blacklisted, appearing before the House Un-American Activities Committee. She stood up to them. She was very brave, and I love the recounting of what she said to the senators as she becomes canceled for about 10 years. Her husband, Herbert Biberman, was one of the Hollywood 10. He actually went to jail for 6 months. Now, Sundergaard did come back in the 60s and 70s. I remember seeing her on many, many television shows. But of course, her film career was certainly ended during the blacklisting. I did also want to show, they have a series, Book versus Film, and Build My Gallows High by Jeffrey Holmes, made into one of the great film noirs of all time, Out of the Past with Robert Mitchum and Jane Geer. And this is a really terrific article comparing the differences between the novel and the book. And of course, Mitchum and Jane Geer I mean, that's the femme fatale and the Trump film noir hero, anti-hero of all time. So one more thing I just wanted to highlight was a book review. They also review some recent noir films that have been released on physical media, also books. And this is one of their book reviews. This is a biography of Lawrence Tierney, and it's by Burt Kearns. And Lawrence Tierney, of course, one of the great presences in so many different film noirs. Burt Kearns was interviewed by Robert Bellissimo. If you're familiar with Robert Bellissimo at the movies, Burt Kearns was on a recent YouTube interview on Bellissimo's YouTube channel, and it was just a great interview. How Lawrence Tierney did not get canceled. It wasn't politics. I mean, the man was a drunk. He was constantly getting in trouble with the police. Somehow he managed to survive his career. He actually spent time in jail. Somehow he never got canceled. And he continued to fight. He would have, when he wasn't drunk, he was a pretty good guy. People did like him. But he was in Reservoir Dogs for Quentin Tarantino, and they had an infamous blow up on the set while filming Reservoir Dogs. So he was cantankerous up until the end of his career, which leads us to Quentin Tarantino's recently published book, Cinema Speculation. Now, this is sort of like the origin story of Quentin Tarantino. Spielberg made a movie of his origin story where it showed him how intense he was on making movies as a kid growing up. And but where Tarantino was going to the movies all the time. And so it's about a memoir of, I saw this film on such a date, I saw it at this theater, and then I saw it 20 more times. And but it's a very slipshod book. It's poorly written. I'm sure, I would suspect it wasn't even written, it was just dictated. And then maybe a modicum of editing done. One-sentence paragraphs, every page loaded with Tarantino's favorite obscenity, 10 to 15 per page. He loves to use it as a middle name, so, Sam effing Peckinpah. for more added emphasis, and he's got a lot of points to make on every page, 10 to 15 opinions on a movie, a director, an actor. It's a little wearying after a while. It's kind of, shall we say, superficial, not to put too fine a point on it. Also, I mean, it has no table of contents. How can you produce a book this long with discussing various movies? You know, every chapter pretty much is another chapter on another movie, and we get no table of contents. We do get a bibliography, strangely enough, but no table of contents. At least at the front of the movie, maybe there is a table of contents in the back. I didn't really look back there. But then he got me. I was ready to put it down, take it back to the library, because this is a library copy. But he was talking about movies from that era that I've been talking about, specifically 1972. So there's 3 or 4 movies that he has chapters on from movies in 72, including Sisters and also The Getaway. And when I read this chapter, which comes about a fifth of the way through the book, he goes into real depth because he loves, as do I, the novel by Jim Thompson, The Getaway, which is very different. In some ways very similar, in other ways very different from the movie. And he discusses his interpretation of the film, which strangely enough, I have a very odd interpretation of The Getaway. I see it as something other than just the action movie that it is. And so we shared that, and I thought his discussion there was pretty good. So I endured the rest of the book, even though I think the chapter on The Getaway is probably the best. And Nazarene Prod also has a review of this book, and I will link to his review down below. But like I say, it's a memoir of him Tarantino going to the movies. I saw this movie at this theater. I saw it 25 times since. And he was seeing these very violent movies at a very young age, and you can see, you know, why his own movies are so violent. That was what he loved the best, the bloodbaths. He calls them revengeonomics. The exhilarating, almost orgasmic feeling that the audience would feel when they see this revenge scenario played out in explicit detail, blood everywhere, ultra-violence as a form of entertainment, as the ultimate, for Tarantino, I think it's the ultimate form of entertainment. And which leads me to the other book that I finished. And as I said, I read these concurrently, and this is Savage Cinema, Sam Peckinpah and the Rise of Ultra-Violence. So Peckinpah, the director of The Getaway, and this is he on the cover with Steve McQueen on the set of The Getaway. So Peckinpah's and Ultra-Violence, especially of the Wild Bunch, is the huge influence on not just Peckinpah, but so many other directors who just saw the kinetic power of extreme bloodbaths on the screen, how it so grabbed audiences, the choreography of it. And but with Peckinpah, and this is written by Stephen Prince, one of the great historians and great writer. So I'm reading this really poor writing of Tarantino, and then I'm reading Stephen Prince, who really knows how to write and knows how to express himself in paper. And very considered opinions rather than this sort of machine gun opinions of Tarantino. And of course with The Getaway, but elsewhere in Tarantino's book, he confronts the ultra-violence of the Wild Bunch in particular. And Peckinpah didn't disown the violence, but that wasn't the reaction. He said, Peckinpah said, that wasn't the reaction I wanted. I wanted you to be horrified by violence. I wanted you to see how awful it was. Tarantino says Peckinpah was being disingenuous. I mean, he knew what the power of ultra-violence was, and that's what he was going for. But I mean, the Stephen Prince proves that absolutely wrong. And Peckinpah never did. His movies were violent, but he never had this kind of bloodbath after the Wild Bunch. And in fact, his violence in other movies, he really does disturb the audience with the violence. We never really know how to react to it. He wants us to be critical of it rather than to enjoy it as a form of entertainment, and entertainment that Peckinpah probably saw as a juvenile reaction to violence. Now, I would have to say that, because Peckinpah has never been one of my favorite directors, I always found him very interesting and intriguing. But I would say, in comparing Tarantino to Peckinpah, Tarantino is certainly a better craftsman than Peckinpah. He writes great dialogue. He knows how to construct a screenplay. Indeed, I think the most interesting part of Tarantino's book is how he analyzes screenplays and construction. Once you get past all his childhood memories of movie going, the people he went to the movies with, and spotting performers, casting so well. But he doesn't have artistic ambition. I mean, in the academic terms, Tarantino would be a postmodernist. He doesn't care about art. He's just referencing other movies that he's seen. Whereas Peckinpah was a modernist. He cared about art. He wanted to be considered a serious artist. Prince cites some interviews with Peckinpah's closest friends. Some of the actors were on. He said, on a lot of his movies, and they would say, Sam really took this seriously, and he would, if he had his deuce, he would have been filming Play It As It Lays in the early '70s. Not these shoot 'em ups, but that's the jobs he could get. He had been pigeonholed by the Hollywood studios, who never cared for him anyways, that, well, he can deliver a good violent action movie. So I'll be talking about The Wild Bunch, The Ballad, Cable Hogue, and Straw Dogs. They'll be my next 3 videos, in which we'll talk a little bit more about Stephen Prince's great book on Peckinpah. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.